All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us. A couple of people here with us this morning so far. I expect, as always, there'll be a trickle of others that will come along in time. Good time to push the plunger down and welcome your questions. So, Pablo, Ben, if you've got anything to ask, whoever gets their hand up the quickest gets to go. So, had a good week this week. Forestry week, look, a lot of, as most people always are with the Rex, it's a hard program to keep up with, and that's no secret, and that's why we invite people to, if they're, why we've devised to go over to a program where we have a couple of Rexes a year, so that people can pick and choose the layers that they want to work on. That in itself has influenced some on-site programming that we're excited to develop and release this year, where it's a bit of a hybrid between some of the stuff that we've done before, where we've done really short, punchy farm planning programs. I did a program a few years ago in Western Australia called After the Fire, and what we did there was people who were part of the Waruna fires, in which I think about 400,000 hectares were burned. Some of those participants, some of those people who suffered from that came along and participated in a program, and what I did was organised with the government organisation that was sponsoring it to have everyone bring a farm map to. And what we did was sort of like a shotgun farm planning, where over 2 days, we introduced to them Agrarian's platform and all of the best practices that we know of around the world. And then following that, we went through every single map, put them up on the board, projected them on the board, and then talked through what they're up to now and what they want to do. And went through the geography, just basically went through the platform and isolated the layers of the platform that were really needing attention, and then concepted those plans up, and then followed that up with later in the year with a subsequent visit in which people discussed, how they were going and what they ended up doing and what their results were, which was really, really great. So we're thinking of doing something similar to that, but expanded on it and integrated in with the workplace and all of that sort of stuff. So always new ways that to make it easier for people to do their farm plans. So we'll see what 2019 brings as far as that model is concerned. So Ben or Pablo, you're it at this stage. So if you've got a hand up, there's Ben. Let's go. Good morning, Ben.
Morning, mate. I only put my hand up to suggest that maybe someone else should go first this morning. I seem to be the instigator most mornings, but I'm
happy with that. So let's go with that. Pablo hasn't popped his hand up, so what do you got, mate?
Got a coffee there, have you?
I've just plunged. No, I'm a tea drinker. I only drink coffee when I'm when I'm out and about,
Yeah.
And when I'm driving and I need a whack.
Yeah, sure. Oh, good one. No, yeah. Tea plunger is a good healthy option.
It is. Thank you.
I've done some forestry planning on this layer subsequent to this week.
Yeah.
But nothing.
Well, that's such a big part of your project is the forestry layer, isn't it?
Yeah. At the moment, I think one of the things that I'm grappling with, and I've already started to address it in terms of nursery stock and what I've been, because I'm trying to propagate a lot of trees from seed. As crazy as it seems, it's been a very fruitful and enjoyable process.
What are you growing them into? Avocado tubes or?
No, so I've had a range of tube and trays.
This is for macadamias or for?
I've got some macas here, but I've got macas that I purchased actually, which are cultivars. But they were going to go into the orchard on the original alignment. But a gut feeling was that the alignment wasn't right. So it was a bit of a wasted purchase in that respect. Now that I'm going to bulldoze half of it. So they're sitting in a shade house under irrigation, just sort of quietly humming away with a bit of some granules on top to keep them alive. No, but I started off with any trays I could get my hands on from the tip shop, propagation trays and nursery equipment is, as you might know, quite expensive for bits of plastic. And I've graduated up to 50 by 50 square tubes, your typical seedling, sapling tube.
How deep are they?
They're the deepest ones I can find, basically. There's shallow ones and there's medium ones and deep ones, and I'm using the deepest ones that I can get locally.
Yeah, what dimensions?
180 or so.
Okay.
180. Yeah. They're probably 6-7 inch. Yeah.
One of the things that we've learned over the journey, we've worked with a lot of nurseries in a lot of parts of the world. That's something I'm quite interested in. Is one of the things that you can do with pots like that is you can put a pot inside of a pot. I don't know if you've seen that done. There's a guy that we worked with who's a really crazy guy. His name, well, I shouldn't say that, but he's a really a very unique man. His name's Phai Wong, and he's a Chinese Malaysian architect who moved himself or located himself with his Australian-born Anglo wife, who's an artist, and they both live in a small town about an hour west of here called Wedderburn. Yeah. And Wedderburn is like it's just an old gold mining town. It's like no one lives there. And anyway, his big thing is pistachios, and he's gone on to become one of the leading one of the leading pistachio growers in the region, and has really been a force behind people growing pistachios in this region. But one of the things that he's really super amazing at is plant propagation. And through his Chinese Malayan heritage, he's found himself in the possession of plant materials from outside of our borders that have been really interesting. And this is like 15 years ago, 20 years ago now, that I had an association with him. But he's still going. But he was exceptional. Like, he was this kind of person who, I don't know that he was that poor, but he propagated like he was. And that was really instructive, because he learnt the ability to not only do conventional grafting, but also root grafting and root propagation and all sorts of things. For example, he came into possession of the famed Afghani or Hunza apricot. Yeah, a Hunza apricot, you can eat both the flesh and the kernel. Normal apricots are quite high in cyanic acid. So they taste like marzipan. They're not edible, but these apricot kernels, you can just eat them out of hand like an almond.
Are they a commercial variety?
Well, they are not anywhere except in Afghanistan. Anyway, he was able to get the seed of those, just a few, and he propagated them up, and he told me about them, and then within about 3 years he had thousands of them. I said, how the hell did you get so many? He said, I took root cuttings and I grew them, and I grafted the tops onto the roots. And it was like, you're a freak, mate,
So he took the top of one plant and grafted onto the root of the same plant, basically to create a new plant.
Correct.
Wow.
And it was phenomenal, and he was able to expand, and he did that with a whole lot of stuff. He's got a lot of really bizarre pears and all sorts of, like, he's got this, it's kind of like Tom Bradman with his pastured poultry. His pastured poultry pay for his cattle addiction. In this case, Phai's pistachio orchard and nursery pays for his rare, weird plant propagation addiction. So
cool.
But the other thing that he was doing, which was quite notable, was that he was taking just general garden pots, like 8-inch and 6-inch garden pots, and stacking them. He cut the base out and stacked 2 or 3 in each other, and then elevate them. And by elevating them, see what he was doing was
air prune the roots, yeah.
Basically getting an air pruning system. Yeah. So he was creating large hyco cells in a way.
Yeah.
Or Lannon cells. And I thought, and I'd seen David Holmgren talk about that when he went to Israel in 1994. He came back and showed us all of these people who had used like Avery mesh, the centimetre by centimetre mesh, steel mesh, and they were growing pecans in that. So they were growing them in, it's like a long, deep wave, and they were putting the planting material inside of that, and then growing the pecans in that material as a sort of a bare root in soil.
Yeah.
And then they were able to air prune them, because as the roots came through, they were being, they were a foot long or 18 inches long, and they were still able to air prune them, and therefore not get the same sort of transplant shock that you might otherwise.
Yeah.
So,
fantastic.
Yeah, it's really interesting stuff, because a lot of these plants, and I'm sure macadamia is included, they put a lot of energy into developing a taproot before they put anything up into the sky.
Yeah.
And bunyias are the same, and quite a few others. And I think it's, it'd be ideal to sort of just go and plant things in situ and then do it that way. But there's all sorts of things that can go wrong doing that too.
Well, you don't have, I've learnt that out in the field, that you don't have control of the environment.
No.
The shade, the temperature, humidity on young plants. So I've been propagating stuff that most people would broadcast, things like pigeon pea, putting them in tube stock. But I've then put them out as, 20 centimetre seedlings, and within 2 months they're 5 foot high and, pushing on an inch at the stem, because I've had, you get 90% success rate, whereas broadcasting, unless you're going to go around with a water tanker or you've got irrigation, we've got a very dry summer at the moment, surprisingly. A lot of what you put out is going to die or not even germinate. So,
well, that's right. I mean, especially and the worst thing is you do get a good germination, and then you get a prolonged hot dry spell, and that just knocks everything out. Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I've long had an issue with direct seeding, and that's one of the reasons why in our presentation on Tuesday I didn't include direct seeding, because
you mean in terms of broadcasting?
Well, even
grasses and legumes and stuff, or
to an extent. I mean, there's direct seeding and there's direct seeding. I mean, it's really about seed cost. A lot of the seeds that we're talking about of tree and shrub stock is not cheap.
No.
So, thank you, my darling. And so, because of that, it's not worth. Well, I don't think personally it doesn't pay respect to the cost that you have in the seed to just go and bang it out. And anyone who's gone and harvested seed, I think too, a lot of people I know who have been seed harvesters, the worst thing that you could do is go and do direct seeding, because harvesting seed is hard work. And when you see the low germination rates that you get, well, sometimes I'd say this too, sometimes you get too greater germination rates. And that's a deficiency in the equipment, particularly with revegetation style direct seeding equipment. It's not really precise. So it puts out, the seed spacing is really close. And as a result, you can end up with really high germination rates in some conditions, and you get trees growing a centimetre apart, which is obviously just not going to work.
Yeah.
So,
I reflect on that, and the photo you showed earlier this week of, you've got 40 tube stock on each hip, and you go around, and if they've been reared properly in a nursery, you're hoping for probably 90% plus success on.
I think so.
Trees,
the nursery part's one part, the ground preparation's the other.
Yeah, and then the first 2 years of that tree's life that's, as I've discovered here, it's a lot of work keeping for us, keeping the grasses away, keeping them mulched, keeping them composted, getting water to them in the winter, and it's been a lot of work. But I think for us, for me personally, in the last 2 years since owning this place, the focus has really shifted from trying to do annual crops and sort of toying with the market garden idea and potentially expanding it to something that might make money, to going, well, actually, my time's probably better spent trying to propagate trees and get trees into the ground as soon as possible, at the expense of working on the house, growing annual crops, doing a lot of other things. But it's, that has really hit home that the skills of propagating and getting trees to that productive point the first 2-3 years of their lives is really something that I enjoy, and you can see the fruits of your labour, and it's a little bit slow, to see. Sometimes it's really quick depending on the tree, but have been incredibly rewarding, and I could only encourage others to, if they're, similar point to us at the start of their journey, or really for anyone, to dabble a little bit in nursery work. I find it very calming and very, there's a really good connection between you and it sounds silly, but there's a good connection between you and your plants and your land.
No, I agree. I mean, having done it myself for a long time, I agree entirely. Some people are, it's like a lot of things. Some people are up for it, and it's of interest to them. And it clearly, you are a tree person. So there's quite a few livestock people who are livestock people, and the idea of growing trees is an anathema to them. So, let alone propagating them. So, But that said, it's like growing anything from seed. It's the heart of regeneration, and you're witnessing it and you're guiding it in a very special way. So yeah, I'm with you there.
Very cool.
So layout wise,
I did have a question in there.
Yeah, go on.
Shelter belts. We're obviously on a very small property, micro property, you could say, in terms of production landscapes, but that limits us in terms of headland space.
Yes.
And we've got an existing orchard, some of which I want to keep, which again limits us, but we are in dire need of shelter, screening, noise, seed from neighbours, all that sort of stuff, dust.
So how does bamboo fit for you?
Yeah, pretty good. I guess the width we're dealing with, to put it in numbers, we're looking at sort of 2 to 3 meters maximum in terms. Yeah,
right. Yeah, well, there's only so many species that you can use that are going to really service you for that. Bamboo, bamboo, obviously, in your part of the world, I'm just trying to think of the bamboos that are going to be 2 or 3 meters and do the job.
That's width, not height.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. I know exactly. Yours is a width problem, not a height problem. I understand.
Yeah, and it's not actually. We don't need that much protection from wind because there are a lot of trees within that system in that area. It's not like we're on an open.
Well, are there many shrubs in the region that sort of fit the bill? Indigenous stuff or stuff. Well, pollinators, all of that sort of thing, because obviously you're gonna have a pollination.
What I've got we run bees as well, so it all helps. Yeah. But what I've got in the nursery at the moment is Albizia lafantha.
Oh yeah, yep.
Acacia fimbriata, which is Brisbane wattle.
Yeah.
Lacuna, which is already. I've collected the seeds from the property.
Well, those 3 species hacked back will all bush up. Well, fimbriata already bushes up a bit, but like just naturally, but if you give them a bit of a hack from time to time, especially early, to give them that, take out any apical dominance, then they're immediately going to, give you a really good shelter from the ground up. Plus, great. Well, fimbriata is going to be good pollen supply, and
So that's what we're looking at the moment. I had considered bamboo in one area.
Yeah.
The other thing I've mentioned in the past, we've got that pine affected soil. We've got about 30 metres of very well established radiata, and trying to grow something basically directly under it, because they're right
Well,
up
the
against.
Fimbriata should, the three species you've mentioned should do okay. It seems to me, like I know down here, a lot of the broom species, which are Cytisus, and also some of the local cassias, which are all leguminous shrubs,
Yeah.
they all don't have a problem at all colonising under Pinus radiata. So it's not like because they take care of their own nitrogen. So there's that part. So you might have to do a bit of inoculation. That might be the case, but that's pretty straightforward. But
Are they all needing? I actually didn't. I must admit, I didn't look that up. Do those three species need inoculation, or is that going to just increase their effectiveness? Or
it will certainly not hurt them. And the best way to do that is just to go and get a bit of soil out of some bush where they're growing. That's the easy way of doing it. Outside of getting, a packaged product.
Yeah.
Any legume is going to benefit from having an inoculant, and having its compatible and co-evolved rhizobium bacteria there present from the get-go. So, but I'd investigate even just here and there, going and putting some Fimbriatas or some of the Albizia or Leucaena underneath. Underneath the pines and see if they take off. You would probably want to do it where you've got, because the competition for nutrients one thing, competition for nutrients another, and it sounds like they were artificially highly. I mean, they're very densely planted, aren't they?
Yeah, less than a metre apart.
Yeah, which is about what diameter are they?
Between about 20 to 35 centimetres.
Okay.
They're pretty. They're about 25 to.
20. You might want to go in and do a bit of thinning.
I can't, of the pines.
Yeah,
I can't touch them. They're on the neighbour's place.
Oh,
mate, they're literally on the border, but they're it's the old school thing of people plant pines on. It was 100 years ago. Plant pines on your boundary.
Yes,
one of those sort of remnants.
So none of them are on. So none of them.
Well, unless I surveyed.
Yeah, right.
I wouldn't.
But even so, I mean, I would be saying to the neighbour, well, anyway, I know what I'd be saying to the neighbour. These trees are artificially at a high density. It's likely that they will get problem. They will run out of nutrients, and if there's a bit of a drought come along, well, that'll affect them potentially. So.
Well, there's other issues there at the moment which need addressing with the same neighbour. So it's down the list, but it is on the list.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. The populating them with or inoculating them, does that need to happen pre-germination? Like, do you need to coat the seed?
Most people do it pre-germination because it's easier. Like with commercial inoculants, it happens at seeding. So there's seed. Yeah. Like you can buy, like if you sow lucerne, for example, alfalfa, you can buy it with or without inoculant, and it's a powder, and so that's because it's sown broadacre. But if you were doing it in the nursery, for example, then you could mix in with some of the potting soil and inoculant, or a bit of soil from an area, like say if you had a patch of Acacia fimbriata that was going really well, you could go into that patch when they're actively growing, and harvest some of the soil around the roots, and then mix some of that soil in with your potting medium, and then you're good to go. So
I was just thinking for existing trees whether there was a way to populate.
Oh, definitely. You can definitely go again. Take the soil from. That's probably the easiest. I don't even know what. Like every species, as far as I understand, every species of of legume has a different species of rhizobium. There are lots of different species of rhizobium. So I think that, like what I've said, is probably the easiest way of doing it. Can you actually buy these individual species, or are you buying sort of generalist rhizobium, as it were?
There are ones from Eden Seeds that are they cover,
Yeah.
I think there's about 6 or 8 different types, and they cover half a dozen plants.
Yeah, exactly. So it's similar to mycorrhizal fungi with other species. There's some that are, as I understand it, that are quite general and will cover a lot of different species, and then there's some that are very, very specific. And so a good example of that would be truffles. I mean, there's hundreds of different truffles in Australia, but the one that people grow for commerce will only latch on to a few different species. So, so it's a similar sort of circumstance. But yeah, I'll have to check in with people who's a good person. Martin Beniati, you might have seen him in the workplace more recently. He's a bit of a whiz, and he's done a lot of training with Jairo Restrepo. And Jairo's the man as far as all this sort of stuff is concerned.
Yeah.
As far as harvesting wild soil microbes, be they mycorrhizae or rhizobia or others, and then harvesting them and then mixing them in. There was a technique that Jairo, or actually I think it was a guy called, a Brazilian agronomist called Sebastião Pinheiro. I think he developed this method called microorganismos. And basically what they do is they go and harvest the soil litter and some of the soil from an area of known vegetation and health, and then they interlay that. They get a 44-gallon drum, a blue plastic barrel that's sealable, and then they layer layers of this leaf mold and soil. O horizon, which is the first horizon. So you've got the litter layer, and then you've got the O horizon, which is the partly or decomposed humic layer, and then you get the A horizon, which is the classic topsoil. So they take some of that O horizon, and then they layer that in between, like in 2-inch layers, if I remember correctly, with layers of bran and molasses. Yep. And they just do those layers, and they fill a drum up, and then they close the lid. And ostensibly what happens is that the organisms that are in that leaf mold in the O horizon, they because they're now under stress in a closed container, they do what a lot of organisms do: they breed. And the food source for them is the bran and the molasses, and off they go. And so what you end up with then is a whole barrel full of spores, which are ready to go. So, and then that either gets put into your agricultural soils, which are currently dead, or it gets put into your potting mediums, or it forms an inoculum or whatever else. But yeah, that crew of Jairo and Sebastião, etc., they're some of the most creative people on the planet as far as this is concerned. And what they do they use technology that it's always got to be, as they say, campesino friendly.
Yeah, accessible.
So, absolutely accessible to someone who has no money.
Yeah.
And they just use the refuse of industrial society. So yeah, I would probably in the soils or forestry group strike up a bit of a conversation on that, because I think it'd be an interesting one, and there'll be other people who chime in as well, of course.
Yeah. Do you know if there's a way with people do down the back of when you're subsoiling, it's common to put like some sort of solution down the back of the shank. Has anyone looked at putting any like physical particles? Like you might have a cedar box or a large hopper, but I'm thinking just when you were talking about that drum of inoculated soil, I'm thinking biochar or powders or anything. Or do you know of anyone who's done that? They're putting.
Oh yeah.
Can you put biochar down the back of a shank?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that you just?
Yeah, biochar's a fun one because biochar doesn't flow well, and that's a problem with a lot of stuff. Powders don't flow very well.
Yeah.
And so that presents some issues, and so that's why a lot of people have gone with liquids. I'm just looking for where's my machinery. Maybe not looking at machinery. Oh, there it is. Don't know that I've got all that over yet, have I? No, I haven't done that yet. Where are we?
Just occurred to me because we've got a huge excess of timber here.
Yes.
Which I've processed into firewood sort of size, but it's 100+ years of firewood in this climate because we just don't burn it.
Yeah. And I hear
cubic meters of it. It's 20, 30 meters long, the pile, and it's growing. Every time I go and do something, there seems to be more timber.
Yep.
I can't think of any use for it apart from trying to gasify it to produce electricity, which is technically, fairly involved process and
absolutely is.
But making and crushing biochar is within the time and money constraints of something I could do to increase fertility. So,
especially using the new. Just to segue for a moment, now that I've found that other site, the Kontiki method.
Yeah, I've looked at that. Yeah,
the Kontiki method. Where'd that go? It was there for a minute ago. Hang on. What have we got here? Don't know why that is in Kontiki. So the Kontiki method, that's a very basic one with a funny looking guy underneath there. It looks like he's up to no good. He's got a box of matches. He looks like a boy with a box of matches. on a hippie property somewhere. But anyway, that particular method I've seen to work really well. And I've had a bit to do with biochar over the years, quite a bit actually. And of all the methods I've seen, I think that's the best that I have seen. There's Albert, if you want to talk about biochar, talk to Albert Bates.
Yeah.
He's the man, and he's in the workplace, and he'll talk your arm. He'll talk all day about it. So by all means, get a biochar thread going.
Yeah.
But he's all over the Kontiki stuff. The better Kontiki setups that I've seen, especially if you've got a lot of material and it's long, because half the thing is getting it into a form, which you got to cut it down and then get it into a form. But the best stuff I've seen have been the long Kontikis, where they almost look like a feed trough.
I've seen them, yeah.
And I know George Howson, who's also in the workplace, he's done a bit of that sort of work as well, and I showed some of his forestry work when we did the presentation on Tuesday. But he's done a lot of that stuff. I think he made up 2 Kontikis. He made up a sort of a conventional conical one, and then he made a trough type as well. Because then you can get the stuff out easily. But then the next step is getting it to flow, and that's a challenge. Now, I'll just while I'm at it, I'll just show you some of these images here. This is some of the work that we did in Mexico. This is in 2009. This is a 6 meter wide yeoman's plough or super plough. We called it the mega plough. And what was done here this was for a rice producer who's also in the workplace. He's got Mexico's largest rice system. It's 10,000 hectares. It's an epic system. it is truly epic. And he's also got a rice mill. And he went cold turkey on using all forms of conventional herbicides and pesticides and fertilizer, and went all the way over through Hyro and Eugenio Grass's help over to organics. And one of the things that we did was we worked with him to build this machine, which ripped the ground because it was as solid as a rock, even though it was all paddy. We ripped it and then sowed it. So we found this old seeder that he had, and we put that on the back of his of this super plough, and then the bioferts were injected down the tube. So you can see the sort of the finished assembly here, where you got the seeder coming onto the back of the large frame. Off that went.
It's huge, and a crumple roller,
Yeah, that's based on the Rodale Open design.
Yeah.
So this is in a factory in Guadalajara, which is featured heavily, I think, in Narcos Series 4. Great city. That's where mariachi started.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time there.
Yeah,
in this workshop. This guy's a whiz. He's got some amazing. He was a trailer manufacturer, made trailers.
He's obviously set up for metalwork.
Yeah, oh yeah. No, he's got profile cutters and you name it. He's got it. So really skilled tech engineers and lathes and anyway, big guillotines. I was in my element. I grew up in metalworking shops, so so I loved it. So anyway, he was able to make all this stuff, which was great for Jorge because he could get all this done. But yeah, that's an example there. Another example, if I look, I think it's in here, now, which goes to your question. Just let me go through some of these images here. Because obviously I've been playing with this stuff for a while. Where are we? Where is... okay, just bear with me, because...
This is dealing with powders or solids.
Yeah. We're dealing with powders. Because we built Eugenio built this machine over there, which did all of that stuff. Bloody hell, is it in here? Super plough. RS, not in there, is it? No, not in there. Ooh, actually, I might just go to our website because I think I might have popped it in there. Just bear with me. Because what they did was they had a biofertilizer tank, but then on the back of their piece of kit, they had a hopper, which also they had compost in, and that compost. Oh shit, wrong one. I think it is. That compost was then fed into. Is it there? Oh yeah, there it is. So those were the two machines they made. So these here are doing seeding, but then this one here, they're actually, you can see the pipe going down behind. That's a modified seeder, which, I've got this wrong. This one here, see the tank? So you've got the tank there.
Yep.
Now, I think Gerardo owns this now. Gerardo Ruiz, who's on the workplace, I'm pretty sure he bought this machine in the end. So you've got the yeoman's plough in and amongst that all, right?
Yeah.
You've got a tank here which has got the biofertilizers. I think this is a separate tank for other inoculant. I mean, these guys really went to town, as you can see.
Mm.
These hoppers here, which have all this drive wheel is driving a shaft which runs a whole lot of different stuff.
Yep. Yep.
Including the I think though that the liquids are probably run by a 12-volt pump. Then these hoppers are filled with compost, and that compost is being fed down, and you can see it's got the slope, and it would have some sort of agitator at the bottom.
Yeah, I was going to say it needs some sort of vibration.
Well, I would say some sort of impeller, actually.
Yeah, right.
Which would actually keep it flowing, because it may even have a chain drive which goes inside. You see, muck spreaders and compost spreaders always have they've either got a belt or they've got a chain which has got hooks on it or little prongs on it, and that goes up and down, and that keeps it flowing. And so I would say but it also starts with this material being powdered. Now, personally, if I was going to do this at large, I would pelletize. Our pelletizers are not, they're becoming, because of what's happening in India, there's a lot of pelletizers which are small scale, which are coming out of India, and they're using them for all sorts of things, from fuel to fertilizers and otherwise. So, and for feed, for animal feed, because what you can do is you can take feed and then pelletize it, and then again it flows better, it has a longer shelf life, etc. So if I was going to do biochar of any reasonable scale, and I wanted to do it mechanically, get it out, I would definitely pelletize, because then you don't have the worry about flow. You will get flow, and you don't have to go to all of this trouble with equipment, because you can just simply have a hopper with some sort of basic agitation and minimum amount of mechanical intervention, which reduces the cost of setting the whole thing up significantly.
If you wanted to use a rig like that for, say, shelter belt establishment,
yes,
how deep would you? I mean, it's depend on your nursery stock and your soils, but roughly how deep would you be ripping if you wanted to use the rip line as your planting line?
I think that using a rip line as a planting line, you really want to do that the year before. Like, you want to rip the year before,
and then
plant. Because even with a yeoman's plough, especially if the ground is really hard, then what you'll get is a lot of air pockets, and so you don't want to plant directly over the rip line until such time as the rip line, all the air pockets have closed in. And that'll take some saturation. It'll just take some time of settling before all of those air pockets fill up with soil effectively. So I've long been an advocate through learning the hard way that, I'll go back. When we started off, we were doing ripping with yeoman's ploughs and then planting pretty well in the same season, or with farm rippers, and we're planting right on top. And then we found that diminished, and increased mortality. Then what we did was we went to planting to one side of the rip line, which was what a lot of people were advising. And that seemed to work okay. Then we started to shift, and this here is somewhat of an anthology of what we've gone through since we started out in 94.5, so we started off with the ripper and the rotary hoe, right? So the rotary hoe actually runs better when it's got a ripper in front of it, because the ripper is a primary cultivator, and a rotary hoe is always a secondary cultivator. So you put the two together. The ripper actually runs better too, because this is a vibrator. And yeoman's released, and that, in fact, this mechanism here, this double bearing block, was originally as a result of yeoman's putting an offset flywheel right here. So he got originally with his shake aerator, he ran a PDO shaft to the frame of the yeoman's plough, and then right here, instead of having another shaft which went to the powered implement, he had a truck flywheel which he put counterweights on, and so of course that put a vibration at the right revolutions on the PDO. That put a vibration or a really strong pulse through the plough, and reduced the power that was required to pull the plough through the ground.
Yeah.
And so he did that. He released that in 1974. So that's how that so we've got as you can see here, we've got a clutch plate there.
Yeah.
In case something got stuck in here, so to protect the gearbox of the rotary cultivator. But we've got that shaft there, and that works all fine. So now that vibration reduces the horsepower there. But when you run this over and you run this, so we've already ploughed this. You can see here, we've ploughed the year before.
Yeah.
And now we're coming through and making the planting bed.
On the same rip line?
On the same rip line.
Yeah.
And this was another piece of kit that we made around the same period, was we put a mounder on the back as well. So we're able to rip, cultivate and mound in the same pass. That became quite revolutionary, actually. No one had done that before, and a lot of large forestry contractors copied that and built really mega versions of that. Anyway, and then the other thing that we built was this, which was either with a power harrow or a rotary hoe. Power harrows are much better because they vertically cultivate, not horizontally, and put that on. Now, where I'm getting to with your question is, through us doing that, you fill in all of the holes with the air pockets. And
by cultivating just directly after you rip.
Yes.
Yeah. So you could potentially, if you're going to plan into a rip line, that's the way to do it.
Yeah. Oh, that is one pathway. Another pathway, which of course I don't know if I've got it in here. Yeah, I've got it. Yeah, this is another pathway I was going to mention was, where is it? Just bear with me for a minute. I'll just go to news. I can't remember I might be able to no-till actually. Yeah, there was
I'm just looking at those photos there. If you're seeding, say on broadacre, if you're seeding grasses, you've got seeder boxes on the back of your plough.
Yes.
Those, you're dropping seed into the rip line. Is that correct? Or
yeah, we did. That was something that we trialled and had trouble with because, as you're probably getting to, that resulted in a lot of seed going down the rip line, going down that cavity. And of course, we'd been frustrated with that for a long time, and that was one of the reasons why we came up with the super plough concept. Now, where I was going to say is, where I've got to with all of this is really this here, which I showed in the presentation the other day. So when you go and drag something through the ground like a ripper, you cut through the mycelial pathways that exist, all of those hyphae, and you're just doing a lot of damage to the soil microorganisms and all of that hyphal network. So with that in mind, I'm continually speculating how one can accelerate the process. It's that permaculture principle of accelerating succession and evolution. Well, how do you do that? How do you create a forest out of a grassland? That usually takes years if a landscape is left to its own devices. So how does one get the conditions where you don't compromise existing soil life and grow trees successfully and not have to weed, right? Yeah.
Sounds like heaven.
Yeah, but that's it.
Yeah.
And to an extent, we've cracked some of those codes over time. But it's never universal because there are so many variations in conditions that hold you from having a universal approach. So, which of course is the anathema of anyone who's searching and trying to market a silver bullet, which is what a lot of the big names in this space tend to try and do. The swale thing is a great example of that. They use the swale as a sort of as this hook silver bullet,
saving the world one swale at a time.
Correct. And it's like, really? Are you that fucking naive? I mean, really? So, I mean, it clearly shows that a lot of people are incredibly naive, and B, not very experienced, because you just cannot have the hubris to say that one solution or one machine or one process will work in every situation, which comes back to our conversation earlier in the week where we were talking about you trying to determine what works on your site, and therefore that might then work in your region. So you tend to develop very regionally specific and therefore climate specific strategies, and then when you go and take them somewhere else, they don't work at all, but there might be parts of them that do. So that's something as an innovator I'm always trying to solve. How can you get away with stuff? And these are some of the outcomes of that. Yeah. So when it comes to seeding, as you asked, if we look at that piece of equipment, where it's got to us putting, we went through the tine seeder and then us ultimately getting to this space here where we've actually got dedicated seeders which are not going into the rip line, they're going either side of it.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And which is more your normal kind of pasture seeder, isn't it?
Well, that's right. Now, how does that work for trees? Well, that's when I saw the outcomes of this, I went, well, because I'd done an experiment many years ago using Balanza clover, where I sowed Balanza clover onto a bed like this. There's Balanza, a bed like this. So I sowed it directly on top of that, and it grew. All it grew as a ground carpet across the whole bed. And I went, wow, this is cool. Now, Balanza clover is an annual clover, and it grows here, germinates in April, and is pretty well done by November, depending on the season. But what it does leave is a nice dense mat of residual vegetation. And so what I did, but it's expensive, so we did this experiment, ran that along over a couple of lines, and then sowed directly trees into it using a mechanical transplanter, such as I think I showed there before. No,
with two guys sitting on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this one was a cup planter, so it actually was a knife-shaped planter. Anyway, we planted those directly into it, and it worked like a dream. And I went, I haven't got a photo of it, I don't think, unfortunately. I may have somewhere. Anyway, we did that, and I went, wow, that's really cool, but it was really expensive. So and then it wasn't until we did this work at Jason Hagen's, where we sowed a crop on either side of the rip line, taking advantage of the natural dead zone that exists once you rip at the right time. And so this is a month or so later, and you can see, or a few weeks later, so we've got rain, everything else is germinated, but these dry sown species have got the jump, and away it's gone. And then, as you can see, it's outcompeted. The oats, in this case, have outcompeted all of the ryegrasses and everything else. And I thought, well, gee, if you could do that and you rolled that, like put a Rodale roller in front of you and then come along with a direct seeder behind you, or a direct planter, mechanical transplanter behind you, you'd have the same result, because you'd have 50 centimeters of bulk oats rolled down, mulch mat.
Yeah.
Go along, put your seedlings into nice moist ground.
And you got ground cover, organic matter, then water retention all in.
Correct. Yeah. Now you inoculate your trees in the nursery with your seedlings with all of the right bugs, and therefore now that you've sort of gone through that accelerated successional pathway. I think personally, if I was like, the ideal in this circumstance would be to find a species which was quite woody, because you want to shift this all over to being a lot more fungal
dominated.
Yeah, so that's another part of this discussion.
Yeah.
And so what what pioneer species can you use that is cheap enough to direct sow, that produces the amount of bulk which will outcompete pretty well everything, well, or, you know, outcompete but dominate the scenario, that you can then roll. So it has to be annual because it has to be crimpable. And then you could plant into that rolled bulk. It may be something that's a mixed species scenario. So there might be one of those short-lived woody, like a Zesbania or Gliricidia or something like that, that you might put into the mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, but these are things that, you know, geez, I need a bloody research farm in every different district and a budget to play. But
I think that's awesome, mate. That's yeah, for me personally, it answers a lot of questions. Hopefully, it does for other people too.
yeah,
and really, it comes back to my question I think last week about establishing, you know, en masse tree systems and dealing with the ground cover issues that come with that, but also not just ground cover, obviously fertility and water retention and getting water into the soil. So it's ticks a lot of boxes.
Yeah. No, it's interesting stuff. But I do think that shift, which I haven't tried, to using something that's going to build up those fungal pathways. It may be that you do that because you've got to have the food for those fungi. It's one thing to go and put in, like you can go and make a fungal dominated compost, for example, and then go and put that down the tube as a compost tea. But if those organisms don't have the fibre there to continue to feed off, well, they're going to go hungry and then they're going to die. So, yeah, you've got to provide a bulk there for food. So otherwise, the microbial pools of this particular type that you want to have present are just going to die away.
Do you think the solution? Well, not solution, but the example you've given there, you've got annual grasses. Could that be, and it might be determined by seed price, like you say, but could that be extended to more sort of perennial shrubs? If you're putting, as I'm thinking in terms of nurse trees for an orchard crop, establishing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you look at what Jimmy did with what's it called? With his, if I just go back to the thing there. Bear with me.
I know that I think you started me down the path actually quite a while ago when we first spoke about she oaks and their antagonistic properties towards Phytophthora.
Yes.
So I started building a sort of guild of nurse trees that I was looking to put out where the macas are going to go. She oaks being one of them.
Well, that sort of stuff is like, and she oaks are really easy to harvest, like the seed of, you know, so, you know, think about your ideal species to work with. I'm very interested in this concept, obviously. But think about what are the ideal species? They're ones that will grow bloody anywhere, need very little water to grow, and will germinate quite readily. Now, she oaks are a really interesting one. I'm glad you brought that up, because when I think of this concept broadly, let's have a look at what Jimmy's done here, because that's really interesting. And I think from this thread's perspective, taking us somewhere. Here we are. So this is Jimmy's stuff. So you can see here what Jimmy's done. He's put in, so he's sown directly. This is all Leucaena, right? Now he's sown that directly into couch grass pasture, right? But the couch, he's sown it when the couch is dormant. This is in northern Mexico. And I know that he's done, or he's doing it, should I say, no. I know he was going to do a similar thing on a property that he's working on in Florida that I've also worked on, but he was going to use albizia. Now, let's say that you were to do that with she oaks, where you directly sowed she oak as a woody, because you can see where I'm going here.
Yeah.
There's nothing stopping you coming along and sort of treating this as a cover crop.
Mm.
And the permies do this with their chop and drop sort of thing. Now, if you chop and drop enough, you'll kill whatever you're chopping and dropping, because you just don't get the root reserves will just run out. Like I could overgraze this Lucina here quite easily and it will die, and then the grasses will just dominate. But in the context of where you're going, you could possibly do something like this. But I think she oak would be a really interesting one to play with for a whole range of reasons. Possibly because it's easy to kill.
Well, I was going to say, we're probably in the orchard area, at least with these nurse trees, 2, 3, 4 years down the track when we need to start harvesting macas, the likelihood is we'll either graze them down to nothing or flower mulch them.
Yes.
Leaving a clean floor. It's a bit different to this sort of cut and come again system.
Yes.
But similar principles in what you're trying
to do.
Yeah,
that's right. I mean, that's exactly. I mean, I first saw this. I think it was in it was in the inner pages of the Permaculture Designer's Manual. I don't know if you recall that, but there's someone, I think in New Zealand, had sown in a very similar way, had sown Tagasasti into an existing pasture to increase the protein browse that was available in that pasture. And I thought, gee, that's an interesting idea. And I'd never done it myself. I had seen on properties that I'd worked on that I'd planted Tagasasti, that the Tagasasti seedlings were coming up in the pasture, meters and meters away from the drip line of the Tagasasti itself. Because the Tagasasti, like a lot of legumes, when its seed pod, when it dries in the sun, because it dries it's available in summer, it actually splits the pod and throws the seed away from itself. And Lucina does something similar, and so do a few other legumes. And it grew perfectly, especially when we used either a flail mower or to cut the grass, because that scarified the seed. Or where we'd done very high intensity grazing, which had also done seed scarification. Yeah, it's all interesting. But yeah, stuff to have a play with, mate, as always.
Super cool. Awesome stuff.
Well, thanks, mate.
Yeah, thank you once again. It's really, really helpful. Hopefully someone else is going to get something out of this session as well.
No, it's all right. If you get in early, that's the way it is. All right, so who else have we got there asking? We've got Ollie, Pablo, and Ray. All right, well, we've got Ray. Ray's got his hand up, so up we go.
Morning, Darren.
Good morning, Ray. How are you, mate?
I'm not too bad.
Good. You'd be glad you're not down in this sunshine state at the moment, I'm sure.
Yeah, we have had it pretty warm up here, but it's not so bad right now.
Well, it was didn't get below 35 in our bedroom overnight.
Oh, yuck. We never get that heat here.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be 44 or 45 today, but anyway.
Ridiculous. Anyway, I did do my homework, well, part of it anyway. So
very good.
The pipe and the tubing.
Okay. So, I see you've... Right, okay. I see you've sent me something. Let's have a look.
So that's just the whole folder.
Yep.
And within...
Oh, there we are here.
No, down.
Oh, no, not that one. Hang on, pardon me. Just cancel that. Why won't that? Bear with me. Oh, here it comes.
Takes to... I think the last time you brought up our map, it was a dodgy boundary, and that's about all that was there.
Yeah. So what am I loading? This one?
3 water KMZ. Yep.
Let's have a look.
And you'll probably have to go in and open up the Topo one as well.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just get this in the right spot first. Programs. So I'll get the one, this geography one here.
Your geography one. So you'll need the.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
That's the most important one.
Okay, and Ollie's put his hand up as well, so we'll just have to bear that in mind with the time we've got left.
I know, understood. Hopefully this one hopefully will be reasonably quick.
But you know who you're talking to though, Ray.
So in terms of how measuring, accurately estimating the volume of a ring tank, how do we do that?
Oh, that's a great question. So glad you asked. Just one moment. I'll just get this. What's this doing? Topo. There we go. Come on. Oy. Whoo-wee. Look at that. Like
that's everything. You're going to have to explode out that topo folder and untick all but the first 3.
Okay.
That's everything that Georgie sent me.
Oh, geez. You want to open everything that Georgie sends you. That's a bad idea.
So, yeah, untick the hillshade slope, yeah.
All right, now we're at it.
No, yeah, that's it. Good.
All right. Now, how do you understand the volume of a cylinder? Now, Ray, were you sitting up the back of the sitting up the back of the class with me back then, were you?
Yeah, it's 2 pi r by height. Okay, yeah. I know the formula, but that's a cylinder, not a kind of sort of cone.
Well, it's a cone. It's the volume of a cone.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, there's on page 136 of the Regrarian's Handbook, you'll see that there's a formula for the volume of a rectangular tank.
Yep.
So you can, and that's a tank dam where there's some sort of slope going on there. An easier way, a back of the envelope way that I use, which is pretty simple and you know, close enough for most intents and purposes, is to look at the surface area there. So, and this is where you might.
I think my back of the coaster things was about 2,500 square meters. It's about
is that surface area?
Surface area, yeah.
Yeah, right. What does that actually do?
It's about a 50.
Oh yeah, well there you go. You've got 2,000 square meters, right? So you've created a polygon, right? Good.
Yep.
Just to give you the tip on that, there's another way you can draw a polygon in this way, and that is by using, if you want to just graphically do it a bit more pretty, then you can use this. Go to the
circle tool.
The ruler tool, and go to the circle, and then what you can do is click and then pull a circle.
Pull a circle, yeah.
And you can determine, but what you can do is sort of fudge your radius. Now, the only problem with it, like anything in Google Earth, you can't grab it and drag it. That's a really big deficiency in Google Earth as compared to other bits of software. But if you're looking to build something that's more rounded like that, which is obviously possible, then you might graphically want to present it in that way, right? Anyway, that's just to give you an example, and others. Clear. Right, so if you've got... So the method that we use, which was developed by the NRCS in the US, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, to measure dam size. So what they do is area in acres times the depth in feet times a factor, and the factor is either it depends on the slope angle that you have. So in the US, most of their dams are that the NRCS recommend are very gentle in slope, so they're large surface area, and well, I'd say their surface area to depth ratio is not as good as a lot of dams that we would build in Australia, where we will often have quite steep slopes.
Yep.
So 1 to 1, 1 to 1.5, 1 to 2 sort of thing. They generally don't like anything less than 1 to 3. So, which immediately means you've got a much bigger surface area.
Evaporation.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so the formula I use is surface area times depth, maximum depth. Now, in a storage like this, most of this is going to be an efficient storage, because if it's a ring tank, which I don't know that it will be entirely given that position, but anyway,
fall, yeah.
I would say this is actually just as another. Well, anyway, surface area times depth times 0.4. So
Okay.
0.4 factors in the slope. Now, it might actually be higher than that because this is such a square, as it were. See, a lot of dams which are shaped like in a valley, which might be shaped like this, they're more like that. And so, of course, a lot of in a valley dam, can you see that all right?
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
So if you're putting, that's what they're considering. Most dams are going to be shaped like. They're going to be triangular in surface area, not square or circular. So that makes a big difference. So it may actually be higher than this. But what you can do anyway is, I would say that this dam will probably have, if it's going to be there, would have a wall that would go like this. It's basically a ridge dam.
Hey, I think you're upside down.
Am I?
Yeah, it's falling to the bottom. So
is it falling that way?
North is uphill.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, you're right. Of course. So that even so, I think that's going to have a C-shaped wall, not.
The reason that I'm like planning it as a tank is for legality. So right. we are legally allowed to put in a ring tank to harvest from that where that you can see just to the right hand corner where your cursor is. There's a
bit of bush.
There's a bit of bush, and then there's a line that snakes through it on a contour. Yeah, that's the pipe to the other dam that we discussed.
Yeah, no, I got that. All right, well, that's the case. Well, let's have a look at the slope then. What have we got? So what are these contour intervals?
1 meter.
Right, so we've got... shithead. Yeah. This is where you need to get the graph paper out, Ray.
I'm going into town this morning and I'll grab some.
Yeah, so basically you've got to create in a graph, you'll have this. I would start back here. I generally go a bit beyond the actual area, the study area. So I would go from here to here.
Yep.
This one will be at the high end of your graph, right, on the X line, right? So you'll start at whatever that is, and then you'll measure the distance between here and here, right, which is 27 meters. You'll go along the graph paper to scale, and this is the thing why you should get it. If you're going to get graph paper, get some A3, because obviously it's the lengths here that you're dealing. And if you haven't got a scale ruler, grab yourself a scale ruler while you're at it.
Yeah,
because that'll make life a bit easier. Anyway, get one of the triangular types. You know the type.
Familiar with them? Yep.
Yep. Anyway, so you'll go along 27 meters or say 28 meters, and you'll drop 1 meter.
Yep.
Right. Okay. And so that's the challenge with the page, is that you'll have to find a scale which will be long enough to accommodate the drop, because it's the drop that sort of dominates this, unless you want to appropriate scale. But I think you don't in these cases. You actually, you don't want to put in an exaggeration. You want to have it so it is true to scale, because what people do in some diagrams, which are cross sections, is they put what's called a vertical a vertical exaggeration into it because of that factor. Because the horizontal distance takes up so much space as compared to the vertical distance. And so you have to apply a vertical exaggeration as a result. But yeah, you don't want to do that with this type of diagram. So I would do that and then start playing with different slope angles. I think you're probably best to start with a 1 to 2.
Batter.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just work off that, because until such time as you determine the stability of the soil, which is a whole other set of discussions around geotechnical stability, you're probably better off just saying, all right, well, I'm just going to start with 1 to 2. I'm going to go up from, so you'll basically what it'll look like if I just move this now, you'll go up from there, then you'll go across with your dam, and then you'll go down, and you'll go down to your depth, whatever that depth is going to be, and then you'll go across, and then you'll go back up and across your bank and then down again. Oops, what happened there? Yeah. And what you'll be looking at is how does that actually fit when you've got, when you've got an underlying, when you've got an underlying landscape which it's going through, which might be this line.
Yeah.
And how does that actually fit? And is there enough material out of here to do this and this, at least visually, right? And then you go on from there.
So how do we then calculate the volume of earthworks in that same donut?
Yeah, that's look, it's a bit fudgy without the 3D software, but I do it all the time, notwithstanding. And that is what I do is I will, you'll do a volume, or you'll do a surface area of that times the volume.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yep. So it'll be fudgy, but it'll work.
It'll get you close enough to sort of say, oh yeah, I think that this will work, and I need to perhaps take it to the next step.
Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah. But that would be what I would, well, for me, that's what I would be doing, and then see how that plays out. And certainly share it in the water section. I'm sure that a lot of people will be interested to see you working there.
Yeah, good.
But otherwise, yeah, I think the idea, which is the broader concept of getting water from the other spot to here is a really great one. And if then you've got this bulk amount of water, which, what did you say? You got 2,000 square meters or so.
Yeah.
Let's say you get 3 meters of depth. So 2,000 times 3 times, say, 0.5. I reckon it'll be higher. So that's 3,000 cubic meters. That's a lot of water. So it may, and that's going to be you stepping back and going, all right, well, what's the budget? How much water, the usual stuff. It's going to be that balance between what can I afford to do and what do I need?
Yeah, no, I can legally do up to 6 megs. Yeah,
right. Of storage, which is a huge storage in this type of scenario.
Yeah, we've been out of water for a long time.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, no, but it is a base. Like, these are not super efficient storages in terms of surface area to depth.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Anyway, let's play through it over time and see what we can get, because I really like the concept. If you can get water to be there, and it's, you've obviously got all of this area quite proximate.
Yes.
Then that, it could make a difference entirely to your whole operation, which is always something that's good.
I think we're good. Thanks, Darren.
No worries, mate. We'll appreciate that. Enjoy your day.
Shall do.
All right. Ollie. Good morning, Ollie.
Good morning. Are you talking to me?
I am talking. Is your name Ollie?
My name is Ollie. I thought you already had another Ollie on the list. I was confused.
No.
How are you?
You're the only Ollie I know.
Oh, good.
Well, on this call anyway.
Except, yeah, exactly. So you're in a photo with Ollie
Holmgren.
Holmgren the other day.
Yeah.
So I'm the Muckleford Warmer property that Jimmy has done a lot of work with. So there's 6 of us.
Yeah,
so
great.
He's a computer whiz, and
Rachel's on the call as well. Yeah.
Yeah, Rachel's my wife. She's at home with the kids, and I'm milking the goats right now. So
good on you. Where are you milking?
I just took one street over. We're in Heidelberg West, and we share milking goats in suburbia.
Wow.
So there's about 6 households, and we all have a day or two that we do the milking and all the care for the goats.
Jeez, buddy. Oh well, you certainly got the training wheels on for the next step.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean that's the whole thing that I guess my question revolves around is the fact that we're here with training wheels on. We're not there up in Castlemaine near you, where our property is, and so we have some decisions to make, and so it's quite a bit hard for us to manage sometimes.
Sure.
Because we're not there yet.
No.
And one particular issue is that the land's been sitting. It's sheep property, and it's broken up. It was an old farmstead broken up into 40 hectare lots. Ours is actually 33 hectares, which poses a few planning issues. But basically, it's 40% bush, and we've got in our pasture these eucalypts sprouting up along the long boundary fence. There's obviously a lot of
they would have come up after the 2010-2011 rains, because that was the last big La Nina event.
Exactly. And I think the fact that it hasn't had livestock on it for some time is really not helping the situation, because
I mean, the best thing to do with those,
it took a year,
would be to grind them to the ground before they become native vegetation, and you can't do it. You can't touch them.
Well, that's what we've done. So
good.
Initially, in our naivety, we went up there with 4-stroke whippersnippers, about 4 of them, with blades on them, and we started going no, and we're like, oh, okay. Well, we've done 10 square meters. How many have we got to go? Okay. So we then got a guy to come in and paid him to just mulch the whole. Well, not the whole lot. He's done it in stages, so we're about halfway through.
Who was that?
His name is Michael. I don't know his last name. He was. We were speaking to an arborist called Xavier. He was going to come and do the chipping for us, but he brought his friend Michael, who had a big tractor with basically a big mower that just pushed the trees down and chipped them on the side.
Yeah, great, perfect. That's exactly what you need to do.
Cool. Well, and then so now we're halfway through, and already the saplings have started to.
Yeah, they will, and that's why you need to keep coming back at them and exhaust their food supply, which is in their roots.
Yeah. Okay. So, well, now that they're small,
that's a good time to do it.
To replow them, to keep doing that mechanical.
Yep, that's exactly what you need to do. Yep.
Okay. All right.
You need, because how it works is the plants, when you cut them down the first time, they resprouted using the starch energy that they stored in their roots.
Yeah.
Right. And all perennial plants do this. They store grasses are exactly the same. And so it's a principle. So we want to.
So it's a war of attrition, really.
It's basically you are trying to exhaust that starch supply. It's just the same. We know how to overgraze plants. We're really good at it. So that's why, in large part, a lot of these landscapes that are around us in Victoria and elsewhere are reverted to annual plants.
Yeah.
Or really gnarly, inedible perennials.
Yeah.
So a lot of the grasses that you have on your place are a lot of them are not edible, not even to root, So that's a successional response to management. So so you just keep at them, and over time. But the other thing that you'll have to change is, and you can't do this until you're there, I think, is get the grazing pressure on.
Oh, definitely.
And have the grazing pressure actually change the soil succession and the soil microbiology. So,
well, that's absolutely the goal. I mean, when you talk about livestock people and tree people, I mean, I love trees, but I just can't wait to get out there and graze the sheep. Sorry about the banging. I'm just getting the manure into the wheelbarrow.
That's all good. It's all good. So no, I think that's if you can afford to do it, then get your mate to, and it'll be cheaper for him to do it now because they'll be able to run over it quicker.
Okay.
Ideally, he would use a flail mower.
That might be what he's got. I mean,
it's like a rotor. It's not a big blade like a lawn mower. It's actually a flail mower. The blade.
When I say a lawnmower, I don't mean like a flat. I don't mean that the blades are spinning on the underside. I mean that it looks more like a type of plow or something that just spins with the blades.
I don't know if you are you on the screen?
Well, you're in my pocket.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Okay, there you are. Hello.
I'm just going to share with you what a flail mower looks like. So a flail mower, where are we? Images. It has, so it's a rotary system. So the blades go around on a shaft, like a rotary hoe.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly
most
the kind of thing he's using.
Actually run on a vertical axis, and they spin like a backyard lawn. But these
absolutely. It's got a horizontal axis.
Yeah, these are much better at managing the scenario you have than a rotary mower is.
Yeah.
So hopefully the guys.
That suggests we're on the track. Yeah, no, absolutely. He's got as you say, a horizontal axis that spins, that rolls like a hoe, like a rotary hoe.
Yeah,
exactly.
Perfect. Well, you're in business. So because these hammers, as they're called, or flails, they are really, really good at smashing up vegetation, and they don't miss anything. See, and they don't windrow things. They put it all in situ, so they're really good for that. Anyway, that's good.
Cool. And is it better to leave the mulch on the ground?
Yeah, just leave it exactly where it lays.
Right.
The biggest thing for you right now is to just kill what's there.
Yeah,
and let it.
Absolutely, because even if we do repopulate it with, like, wattles and acacia, that sort of things that's going to enhance the soil in certain ways. We just don't want those eucalypts. They don't really offer us much.
No, that's fine. Look, and down the track, see, when you get there, then things will be different. You can go out and do some grubbing and chipping and all those sorts of, more hand kind of work.
Yeah.
Which a lot of us growing up on farms in central Victoria and elsewhere have been very familiar with. I mean, I grew up chipping out bloody, as long as I can remember. Here's an axe or here's a big sharp hoe, and go and chip that paddock of the eucalypts. And they're just little plants, they might be 30 or 40 centimetres high, and you just go out there with a hoe and go whack.
Yeah.
And over time you get through them.
Yeah.
Now, if you do that sort of work at the same time as apply your grazing pressure, and I think Graham Hand's made this point a few times in the workplace where other people have asked the same question. You can't. The concept, Graham's basically made the point, and I agree with him entirely, that you can't just rely on grazing alone. There's a sort of a perception and a narrative in holistic management that you just do management intensive grazing and all the woody perennials will go away.
Yeah. It's certainly been touted as a silver bullet, speaking of.
I don't see the evidence of that completely.
Yeah.
Certainly you'll see a reduction, but it's not complete. You've actually got to get out there and do a few other things.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, two slightly corollary questions to that is, do you think that then is a good place to develop a woodlot or a shelter bed, or
well, I'd need to see it in the context of your whole plan. So you might want to do that and raise.
Yeah, definitely.
Because yes, I mean, those are trees which are fair game as far as I'm concerned. And so it's kind of like what I talked about here in this diagram on the screen now. Present. See, very similar situation to what you would have had.
Yeah.
These are river red gums that came up at the rate of 8,000 stems per hectare, right?
Yeah.
And so, which is obviously a way too high a stocking rate.
Yeah.
So what usually happens with, like, and it would be the same with those stems. If you let them go for 30 years, they'll thin themselves out. It'll be a war of attrition. Right, and so a lot of the smaller stems will just die out through lack of moisture and nutrients. Now, so what I did was I went through and I selected the stems that I wanted to retain and removed everything else.
Yeah.
Now, I've done it down to the ground. You can see one of the stumps here, and I should go out and get another photo because a lot of these have sprouted and they're ready for me to run over them with a mower or whatever. I've got the room now to be able to run through there, or just go along with a hoe and just go whack.
Yeah.
And get a bit of farm gym for myself, which I'd probably really need. Not on a day like today, though. But
no, it's pretty hot.
But now, like, I haven't had to buy one of those.
Yeah. Are you in Mount Alexander Shire up in Bendigo?
No, we're in the city of Greater Bendigo. Although
we have some restrictions around what we can harvest above a certain size. I mean, that was our sort of urgency.
Maybe they're probably like
it was over 10 centimetre in diameter, and you couldn't cut it down anymore or something like that.
Yeah, right. Well, that's if that's the case, that's probably related to a native vegetation clearing control, which would be a bit of state-based legislation, which is also influenced by a bit of federal legislation around land clearing. Yeah. Other things that we've signed up to as a state. So, by all means, pay attention to that sort of stuff, because you are in a region where you've got people who are pretty bloody green, deep green, and will be easier. So I'd get onto it and I'd keep at it.
Yeah.
But like I said, the plan, if you want to do any retention, then do the retention. There's another caveat I would make to this, which is of interest. And there was a thing that was developed years ago called a plantation development notice. Yeah, we had a bit to do with that in the 90s. Now, so is there some scraping that's going on there?
That's raking. Is that causing issues?
It's very audible. It might be.
Okay, sorry, I'll stop that.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So the plantation development notice it was designed in the 90s when we had the plantation boom here in Victoria, so that it was basically as an antidote to native vegetation clearing controls. So what that meant was, so if you planted an estate of blue gums, for example, well, blue gums are native vegetation in Victoria, and people, in order to protect themselves, a particular lawyer developed a bill which protected the asset, the forestry asset, from anyone coming along as they could have. It was a loophole that emerged where someone could come along and say, "Hey, you can't cut that plantation down because that's native vegetation." Right. As you pointed out, one of the things that happens is vegetation gets to a particular growth stage and dimension, and then it becomes permanent, and then it becomes covered by this legislation, and then you can get in serious trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So one of the ways around that, which was developed, was that you developed a plantation development notice, which basically is a plan which you submit to council. It's a farm plan which says this vegetation of this species here, there, and wherever, and you codify it all and whatnot, is part of our plantation. Yeah. And therefore is that we reserve the right to manage it as we wish. According,
Right.
within the other laws that are around land protection and whatnot that you have to adhere to.
Yeah.
So,
what was that bill called?
it's called there's a form, and it's called a plantation development notice. Now, other states and territories have mirrored that legislation as well. I think there was something on that. If I just get over here. I think I put something in the forestry section. We might have had a bit of a discussion about this development. I remember having a discussion somewhere. Oh, where is it? Plantation, maybe it's that. Ooh, I know we had a discussion about this. I'm just trying to think where. Anyway, if you wish,
we can find that. That's fine.
Well, if you can't, raise the issue in the forestry layer.
Yep.
And we'll bring that up for you.
Great.
Oh, yeah, cool. Been there before, but I'll have a bit of a dig. But that's a really good way to be able to take that vegetation that you've got, even though it's regrowth, and retain the right to access and manage it as you wish.
Yeah, right.
As you should. I think it's all bullshit myself, but I mean, I get it why they have that, because we've had such gross land clearing practices in this country that there has to be some protection.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding, rational people who are good land managers, don't want to remove everything. They want to have a balance. So,
or even have a program of harvesting and
correct. I mean, you look around where you are in Heidelberg. Today's not a good day to be in Heidelberg.
No.
As a result of the of the lack of forestry management, because that's all of what's emerged as a result of people just not managing things properly. Yeah. So Anyway, so you're at 33. I didn't actually twig about that 33 hectares. Yeah, because you're zoned rural, so you won't be able to have there under 33 hectares.
Oh well, I mean, maybe you know something I don't know, but I've been given many indications that as long as we can show that we need to live there to farm it, which is pretty easy as long as you are actually farming.
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
that there are ways around that legislation as well. So 40 hectares is a given, pretty much.
Yes, but I know.
But anything under, you just got to show that you're. Apparently, someone even did an application for farming snails. That's what we've been told. So that's pretty hilarious.
Obviously, your business plan is going to be a bit more realistic. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they did go through ahead and do. I mean, snail farming. Yeah, great if you can do it. But did they do it? Because if I were the council, I'd be really dubious, and I'd be following those people up. But anyway, I know that from my dealings with Mount Alexander Shire and their planners, they're really good planners.
Cool.
They've been really, because we've had a bit to do with them over the years, and also our daughter's got a property in Castlemaine, and she's had really good dealings with them. They've been quite out of the box, which is great.
Oh, that's great to hear.
Yeah, but I'm not guaranteeing that it'll be your experience. But
I'll come to you. I'll come knocking to you if they don't.
There you go. But I think the most important thing in this space is to know what you're doing. And to be assiduous in your understanding of the planning scheme, which is not difficult. Because the planning schemes are pretty clearly written, I think. And if you're across all of that and all of the definitions, then you're halfway there. Then you can go in and talk the language, and don't bullshit people and don't do bullshit things, because you'll be found out. So you got too much to lose. So do it properly. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for that. No worries, mate. That's really helpful. Hopefully you're done shoveling shit for the day, and you can get inside and get a cool drink. Yeah, maybe. Stay cool today. What's it going to be? 45? 44, yeah. Yeah, crazy. Crazy. Yeah. I've got a bit of work to do, but yeah. All right. Anyway, cool. Anything else you got?
No, that's. I mean, the others are listening, and if I've forgotten anything, then they'll remind me, and we can post it up on Forestry or
No
send you a
worries.
message. But that's really helpful for now.
All right. Good
Thanks
on you,
a lot.
mate.
Cheers.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
All right. Well, coming to the end. If anyone else has got any questions, then it's a good time to put your hand up. Otherwise, I'm going to pull the plug and get back on with the day. My hot little room. I put a fan on today. I think it's getting to that point. Oh, even though it's so early. Ray Palmer, he's back. What have you found, Ray? Have you rushed into town, got your graph paper, and you're on to the next thing?
No, I haven't yet. So building a tank to a specific size, is that something? I mean, if we do decide that we've got access to the capital and go with the 6 megs, how do we? Is it just a matter of design and redesign until you get one that's about the right size?
Well, look, I would say to you that I would put into the budget to have a chat with Georgie.
Oh, yep.
Because if you're going to be looking at building something of that size, Georgie could, in a moment, for just $100, $150 or so, I think is his minimum fee.
Yeah.
He could do a 3D design for you.
All right.
So
Okay.
if you look at that in the scheme of the whole cost of the project, that's nothing. I mean, that's not even an hour's work with a bulldozer.
Yeah, no, that's nothing.
Yeah. So if you're building a you're basically going to need to be budgeting probably anywhere from $3 to $5 a cubic meter.
3.
And that's something you want to check out. I'd start talking to people about that sooner rather than later. What the costs are going to be, per cubic meter.
Yeah. Okay.
Earth movers don't like talking in cubic meters to people because they sort of go, "Oh, bugger, you're onto me." They love hourly rates.
They love hourly rates.
They love hourly rates. They don't like people talking in cubic meters because cubic meters are what they talk in. And they really like it when you don't. But the other thing is for you to be really certain about what your ceiling is, what your budget ceiling is. And it's going to be a whole project because you've got the pipe work, all of that connection between the system to the tank, or to the tank dam. So you're going to have to look at it from that whole context. But I would break it all down into its elements. So you're going to have the pipe, all of the fittings, and the dam. And the dam, you're going to have to, basically, you're almost going to have to design it in reverse, Ray, as far as the budget. And then you're sort of going to go, okay, well, the pipe's going to cost, let's say you had 10 grand, just to pull a figure. And you said, all right, well, what can I do for 10 grand? Right? And then you're going to say, well, I have to get the pipe from A to B. That's a given.
Mm-hmm.
Right, well, what does that give me left to build the dam? And it might be, well, geez, all I can do is 3 megalitres, not 6.
Mm.
But if that's your budget, that's your budget.
Yeah. Okay.
But I would, one thing that you could do is have a chat to Georgie about what it might take to put a few scenarios together. So a 6 meg scenario, a 5 meg, 4 meg, that sort of thing. So at least then you've got some figures as far as how many cubic meters in the embankment we're talking.
There's people that I've spoken to around here other farmers give you a rough rule of thumb of $1,500 to $2,000 per meg to build a ring tank.
Well, if that's the case, then that's. But I would shore that up with some earth movers.
Yeah.
And as soon as they start saying but or whatever, or all of that sort of, oh well, it depends.
Well, it depends if you hit rock or sand, double it.
Well, exactly, and that's the thing, and that's where again, that's why we've developed the process that we have, which is in the water chapter. if you go through that process, then I'm not going to guarantee you're going to have success, but you'll be bloody a damn sight surer than you would otherwise, especially when you do your geotechnical investigation, which may be something you might want to do sooner rather than later anyway, because you could go a fair way down the path. It's actually a good point. You could go down a fair way. Like I would say, therefore, do your drawing off your own bat, and I would go out there with a backhoe or something like that, just something cheap, and do some test holes and just see what's there, because this could run away very quickly if you don't have the clay.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right.
Too easy. That might be the rest of my day. We do have an excavator, so I can go and scratch a few holes.
Oh, have you? How deep can you go with it?
It's a 6 ton, so I can go about 5 meters.
Oh, perfect. Oh, great. Excellent. That's great. Oh, well, you could build it yourself then. What are you bloody calling up?
It's only on wheels. So it was a cheapie on wheels, so it has limitations.
Enough said. All right.
But do you reckon it's still viable to build dams with, or something like that, with a tractor drawn scraper? Like,
have you got one?
Yeah, I do. It's only a little fella, only what, I don't know, half a cubic meter maybe.
Oh, look, people have done amazing things with buckets and shovels, mate.
I know. There's an enormous dam that was designed on keyline principles out to the east of Stanthorpe. It was just built by 2 blokes with Fergie tractors and scoops.
The first dam I built was with a Fergie tractor and a scoop, and I was on the wrong end of that. I was on the scoop end when I was 15.
Yeah.
Summer holidays. Wasn't enormous. It was only 1.5 meg, but as a 15-year-old, it seemed bloody big at the time. 4 weeks or something it took us.
Yeah.
For a dam that with a D7 would have taken about a day.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if it's a good scraper, then look, I don't see any reason why not. It's just how valuable is your time, and how confident are you that you're doing what you need to do. Scrapers are really good at building structures like that, though.
Yeah.
So if your biggest thing, I suppose, is going to be, well, I would go through the geotech to start with, because then that'll find what layers of material you've got where.
Yeah.
Because you may, let's say, for example, you've got clay at 2 meters, and then you've got a lot of shit on top of that. What are you going to do with all that shit?
Yeah.
And that's where it comes into the embankment design. And that's one thing that with scrapers, like a larger scraper, especially an elevating scraper, they can cheaply and relatively efficiently mix materials.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take a half a bucket of this and a half a bucket of that, and because it's elevating, it's got that conveyor inside of it. It actually mixes the material together, so you can get a pile of sand and a pile of clay and turn it into a sandy clay.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's those sorts of things. Bulldozers can do that to an extent as well. But look, let's have a look at what's there.
Yeah.
Because let's say that let's say that you have a bit of sandy loam on top, and then underneath you've got some 25 to 30% clay mixed with the granite sand, sort of a sandy clay, and you've got a meter of that, then you're probably going to be close to being in business with something like you've got. Let's do the geotech.
Yep. Good eye.
And it's going to be mainly of the whole, not of the perimeter. So my advice is because the embankment is basically going to be built by what's in the hole.
Mm-hmm.
And so on. So let's get your drawing done. Can you share that with us when you do the drawing, please?
The
cross section
graph paper.
Yep. Put that in water, and let's run it as a sort of a bit of an open project, if you like, if you could.
Sounds good. Too easy.
Right. Perfect. Good one, mate.
Good, Darren.
All right. Rachel's asked, should we lay mulch on contour? Yeah, I suppose. I think that might have been relating to another question, which might have passed. Oh, is Rachel still there? There she is. So getting you to talk, Rachel, to elaborate on that question, if that's okay. Hello, Rachel. Hello. Hi, can you speak up a bit more, please, or come in closer?
Yeah, is that close enough?
No, I can barely hear you.
Okay, wait, I'll try something.
Oh, now I've just turned my mic up. That's a bit better.
Is that better?
Oh, yeah, no, you're loud and clear now. Perfect.
Okay.
So, how are you?
Great. That was just in relation. Yeah, good. How are you?
Good.
That was just in relation to Ollie and speaking about like getting Michael to come and chip, like go through all the eucalyptus saplings, but then wondering, rather than lay it where we are, I just, from your talk, like, should we lay it on contour?
If the best thing that you could do for me to answer that question would be, can you show me on a map, just even if you just draw some areas, like just some polygons, can you just draw that on Google Earth or whatever and share that with me on a map so that I can help with that? Because otherwise I would just say, just have him just drive through it and drop it. And and just leave it.
He took it all last time. We're like, no.
Oh, right. Yeah, no. Yeah. Anyway, just do that for me, and
cool.
that'll be easier for me to determine what's going on.
Great, cool. Thanks for that.
No worries.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, I think we're all good. Yeah. All right. Well, no other hands up. All right, well, I'm going to shut things down then. Thanks so much to all of you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Good round list of questions as always, which is always enjoyable for me. So I appreciate that. If you're in the heat today, stay cool and get everything watered. And otherwise, if you're in the bloody cold, which I know some of you are as well, stay nice and warm. In the meantime, enjoy your weekend and today, and we'll catch up with you early next week, if not before. Thank you very much, and take care.